I work with individuals. A lot of them are professionals, entrepreneurs, and they are very busy. They have hectic schedules. A lot
Yeah.
of them do travel, whether within the country or abroad. So they find it difficult. It's frustrating for them to stay healthy, even if they want to. They have the
Sure.
motivation, but very often they are not at home. And as you said, temptations, distractions. So what we do is that we work together to find a plan, a program that works for them, that works with their lifestyle, their schedules, and also depends on what their goals are. They might need more guidance with sleep or some healthy eating habits, or even to manage stress. And so,
Yeah.
the important thing is finding something that's sustainable.
Tess, welcome to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. I'm very excited to have you here. And when we kind of first started coordinating, I was learning more about you. I really resonated with so many things that you brought up and the work that you do in terms of, being able to really enjoy ourselves and live our lives and travel and all of these things without, especially around food, without guilt, how we can do that more, mindfully and with wellness in mind as we do it, really diving into being a local kind of wherever you are. And it sounds like you were very well traveled as well. So I really want to dig into that first. But before we do, a big welcome to you.
Thank you, Tara. Lovely meeting you.
You as well. Well, let's start there. Let's start with your travels because from what I understand, you have traveled to all seven continents. Is that correct?
Yes, I have. I had the good fortune to cover the seventh one quite some time ago when I went to Antarctica. So that was amazing. But I love traveling, and so that's the message I want to go get out there that you can stay healthy and you can be mindful of your health practices. You still have a good time, but then this way when you come home, you don't have all that work to do. You don't, you're not all starting over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to sidebar for a second. Can you just talk to us a little bit about the work that you do as a coach and, as a health and wellness coach and just sort of how you like traveling or not, we can, however you want to answer this question, but just how you help navigate or help clients navigate, staying healthy, whether we have, demanding schedules, right? Maybe a 9 to 5 or, little temptations that come out, throughout the day, wanting to snack or whatever. And just, yeah, just talk to me a little bit about that work first before we dive in.
Yeah, I work with individuals. A lot of them are professionals, entrepreneurs, and they are very busy. They have hectic schedules. A lot
Yeah.
of them do travel, whether within the country or abroad. And then they have meetings, back to back very often. And so they find it difficult. It's frustrating for them to stay healthy, even if they want to. They have the
Sure.
motivation, but very often they are not at home. And as you said, temptations, distractions. So what we do is that we work together to find a plan, a program that works for them, that works with their lifestyle, their schedules, and also depends on what their goals are. Some people are very good
Sure.
with working out, so they don't need help with that. But at the same time,
Yeah.
they might need more guidance with sleep or some healthy eating habits, or even to manage stress. And so,
Yeah.
the important thing is finding something that's sustainable because they find that, the internet has a lot of information, but it doesn't apply to everyone, because we all have
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
backgrounds, different preferences, and it's not
Mhm.
one size fits all. And also, it
Yeah.
depends on your living situation, whether you're living on your
Mhm.
own or you have children, young children, or with family.
Sure.
All those things apply. And so we come
Yeah.
up with, a program that actually works and find little things that they can do at the beginning because you don't want to overwhelm people. So take little steps at
Yeah.
a time, how they can fit in with their busy lives and little things they have to watch out or, when they're going to an event or when they're actually getting on the plane, what they have to
Yeah.
do, all those things.
Definitely. Yeah, and I would imagine too, just our body, right? Just between like me and my husband or like just friends, whoever, like traveling affects us all so
Mm,
differently, I
yeah,
feel like, right? And I can just feel and as excited as I am, right, to maybe go to a new place, but like those first couple days, like and also just traveling in general can make us very dehydrated and things like that, right? So I've personally learned a lot in my years of traveling wherever, short distances or long distances, and keeping consistency. And I think what you just touched on is
mm,
so important in terms of, making it really realistic and manageable and starting small because it can, I would imagine, feel like a very big shift if that consistency hasn't been there or there's just a lack of consistency in their schedule to your point, right? So maybe they're not always home or they're going on business trips or whatnot. So what are some recommendations that you would maybe make if someone is let's with the audience of this podcast, let's think more in terms of like just traveling for leisure, maybe it's in
mm,
every once in a while, not so much business
yeah,
trip like.
yeah.
But what have you learned and what would you say to someone here who, perhaps is going on a trip or loves to travel in terms of kind of just maintaining that balance, of like exploration and all the newness, but also the wellness piece.
I think, it's important to stay mindful. And
Yeah.
in order to have consistency, you have to be disciplined. And I think when you're
Yeah.
traveling, you need to be more so and need to make more of an
Mhm.
effort. And this
Mhm.
way, you can stay consistent because it's hard, with different time zone and you might be out sightseeing
Yeah.
all the time. Eating in restaurants, the cuisine might be quite different and there's some
Mhm.
local stuff that you want to try, you don't want to deprive yourself. But it's
Right.
actually having that mindset that you want to keep, stay healthy wherever you
Yeah.
are. And I say that to all my clients, wherever you are, that is your priority. So you're not going to
Mhm.
say, oh, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks or for 10 days. And you say, I'm on vacation. I can do whatever you want. But you don't want to be that way because the brain
Right.
it plays the tricks, because once you get back into those bad habits, when you come home, it's really more difficult. And
Yes.
besides, you don't want to have that setback that you have to start all over again, all that hard work that you put into
Mhm.
it.
Mhm. That's such a great point. I won't name names. I have a family member that happens pretty much anytime
Mm,
they go somewhere, which isn't super frequent, but that's, they to your point, right? They're doing so well at home or maybe they're on a little bit of a stricter diet, right? But then they sort of get in this mindset where they're like, I'm on vacation,
mm,
YOLO, like, they're like, let me go crazy. And then they kind of I have no better word for that. They kind of ruin all of the progress, and then they come home, and that starting over, it's very jarring, and they lose any momentum that they
mm.
had. So let's dive into that a little bit in terms of, let's say you're going to a totally new country, totally new place. What would you say to someone here listening, or like what tips do you have for kind of enjoying that and eating like a local, but without the guilt? So I guess it's a little bit more of that balance that we've been talking about, but still enjoying that, but, still staying energized and, still feeling your best when you're
Yeah.
traveling.
When it comes to eating choices, again, be mindful. Make sure that you get enough fruits and vegetables,
Mhm.
protein, just so you focus on those things.
Yeah.
And yes, you can try different things, even if that involves carbs, but just say to yourself, I still need protein because that gives you all the,
Mhm.
the important nutrient that you need. This way,
Yeah.
you're less likely to get sick, your immune system stays strong. And,
Yeah.
you can try it, but just maybe smaller portions
Mhm.
and make sure you get enough vegetables, because very often when we travel, it's not so easy. And if the portion is not enough, for the vegetables, just ask for, more so, just have more. And with
Mhm.
fruits, I will say, depending on where you're going, for example, at the moment, I'm doing some research on Egypt and
Oh, man, that's one of the top places I wanna go.
yeah, and
Yeah.
apparently food poisoning is not uncommon.
Yes, I've heard that. Our daycare, the people that were like were on my daughter's daycare, they were there maybe like a couple months ago and it happened to one of them and it was not
Yeah,
pretty. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So I suggest not buying it from stores where they cut it all up and put it in the bag.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just don't know how the hygiene is anyway. So what you
Yeah.
do is, I always say, it's a good thing to do when you get to a new place, whether it's Egypt or Paris or anything, beforehand to find out where the supermarkets are. If
Mhm.
they are near where you live, where you're staying. So this way, when you get there on the first day, go and get your essentials. Go and get your fruits
Mhm.
there. And then you have them at your Airbnb or hotel room. And this way, you're not, every day you're not thinking, oh, where can I get the fruits? What do I do?
Right.
You've got a supply there. And then
Mhm.
you have something healthy, something that, is not going to give you food poisoning. Uh, and
Oh,
sure that you don't get enough of your top up your fiber intake. Just make sure you get enough fruits and vegetables, limit your sugar intake. All those are good
mhm.
practices. Because if you think about it, you're going on vacation, you're excited, you're going on a trip, but your system, your body, your organs are not on vacation. Yes,
Right.
you have to process what you put in there. And,
So true.
sugar is not good for us in general, and it's not going to be good for us whether we're on vacation or not.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great point, and I think one thing that a motto my mom lived by a lot was all in moderation, right? And
Yeah,
I like that, not even just from a weight perspective, although I guess it could be good for that, but it's more like that's how I like to go into it with, like, certain countries we might go to where I almost am like, I wanna just try, like, a little of everything, you know? So it's instead of and that's been really helpful for me in terms of, like, not feeling overly full or, kinda overdoing it on any one thing or, like, if John and I are traveling together, we'll maybe order, like, a few either appetizers or a few plates and instead of kinda just one big one between he has his and I have mine,
yeah,
and so we can taste more and enjoy more that way and get more of the local cuisine and dishes, but, again, still can kind of, like, keep those things in mind.
yeah, exactly. You can share dessert, but you
Yeah.
can have a dessert tonight, but not tomorrow night. No, not tomorrow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
oh, I can have dessert with every meal. That's not moderation. You can still try something, but there are days when you're being good, you know, relatively, and there are days
Yeah.
when you can be naughty.
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, that's so true. Is there anything from sort of a mindset perspective that instill in your clients or work with them on? So of course, there's the sort of the things on paper, right? Of like in terms of what we can keep in mind with diet and
Mm.
those things. But it's easier said than done sometimes when you get
Oh
to
yeah,
a new place or actually to bring it back to maybe like a business trip or something, for example, if it's like you just have to get a quick breakfast or it's
mm,
something that you maybe have to or like a quick lunch before a next meeting or something. And I know in America especially, there's so much convenience out there,
yeah.
but it's not always very healthy. So,
Mhm.
is there anything that you would maybe say? Well, first of all, you gave a great tip already in terms of if you're vacationing somewhere, like knowing where the grocery stores are. That could even be good for a business trip too. Just kind of clocking those things so you're not perhaps left with having to grab something super quick
Yeah,
on the go, because I know as a coach myself in a totally different space, I know that it's like, okay, that's great, we can have a plan on paper, but once we get in those situations, the mindset part
yeah,
is very important. So is there anything there that you would say or
yeah.
recommend?
And yes, that's why planning is key, preparation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so what I always like to say to my clients or even friends, if they're traveling, is do your research beforehand
Yeah.
and do your preparation before the trip. You can bring some healthy snacks with you. It's like nuts, raw nuts, unsalted, and you
Mhm.
can buy them in little individual packets and you can
Yeah,
bring
it's nice
those
with that
with
portion
you.
control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that way, when you're at the hotel, in the hotel room, if you just need something to eat, at least you have something, relatively healthy with you.
Right.
Or
Right.
even canned fish. I happen to like sardines. You can get wild salmon in a can. If you stay in a
Mhm.
hotel, you can always get a can opener from the restaurant.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's true.
you can eat it quickly in your room before you run off to your meeting. It all sounds perhaps maybe big deal, but it's not if it's important to
Right.
you. Just all those little things, maybe some low sugar protein bars you can bring with you as well. And
Mm-hmm.
again, if you do have time beforehand, before all the craziness starts, go to the grocery stores, maybe get some avocados because the hotel
Yeah.
restaurant might not have any. And,
Mhm.
just those little things to see, what you can have. In a hotel room, very often there's a fridge in the room that you can store stuff, which is, quite
Yeah.
a nice thing. And
Sure.
it's really just doing it at the beginning of the trip, if you have time,
Mm.
if you can, rather than saying, oh, I do it in 2 days. And then 2 days later, no, something comes up. And then,
Yeah.
maybe tomorrow in the end, the trip is over. And you
Yeah.
find yourself, having done any of that, and you've just been eating stuff on the go.
Yeah, definitely. Which, yeah, again, there's something to be said about the convenience. Like, I get it. I get how it happens. And
Yeah.
especially with if you have kids and things too, right? But also, I will say as a parent now myself, like I want to make sure that she also eats well. And we've gotten caught in situations where we had to get something a little quick. And I was like, oh, I'd really prefer not to give her this. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like the least healthy thing in the world, but it wasn't, maybe a fruit or vegetable in that moment. So yeah, lots of tough lessons around around that
Yeah,
too,
and make
but
sure you stay
it's so true.
hydrated.
Yes,
That's so
that's a big one.
important. Water. I travel with a filter water bottle, but I do that
Yeah,
everywhere I go these days because of the microplastics and everything.
yeah, same.
Just- Yeah, and some of them do filter out quite, almost everything like bacteria, anything like that. If you're going to
Yeah,
countries like Egypt, Mexico, that's quite important. In fact, that's
yes.
very important. So have that with you, then that way you stay hydrated. You're not thinking, oh my God, the water is not that, I don't know how clean that water is. I better not drink any of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so and then on the plane also you stay hydrated. That's
Yeah.
important. And one thing we haven't talked about is movement, stay, keep not particularly anything, you have to do like going to gym or anything like that, but just keep moving. Go to the
Mhm.
park or go for a walk. If there are stairs, use the stairs. All
Right.
those little things, that they add up.
I was literally about to say it all adds up. It's true. My husband and I joke about that all the time, whereas or it's like and even in like a parking lot, right? Park a little bit
Yeah,
further away and
yeah.
walk, God forbid 20 yards further. It's like it's gonna be okay. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I wanted to bring up movement. So thank you so much for that. And it's funny, I'm sure with a lot of us is traveling, it feels like you're constantly on the go and it
Mhm.
is a lot of maybe walking or things like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like for a lot of us, it's just like, okay, I can kind of get that down, but then it's for me sometimes it's like no matter how much we're walking or moving, like there are still sometimes on vacation where I feel a little bit bloated or it's just and
Mhm.
that's where I feel like, it's the change in environment, it's the food that we're not
Yeah.
perhaps necessarily used to. So it's probably would you recommend too? I mean, that's actually kind of an interesting point that I never completely thought of was, I think a lot of us we get to a new place and we kind of dive right into the new food and again, if you're going to France, for example, there might be a lot more butters or fats or
Yeah.
things that
And
are included in your
pastries.
food than yes, which are so, so, so tempting. But almost kind of I'm gonna use kind of a funny term, but like microdosing like into that, right? Like we're
Mhm.
kind of giving ourselves like introduce it a little
Ye
slowly if we can instead of like going all in. Like, is that
Yeah.
something you would kind of
Yeah,
try and do as well?
definitely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Because,
Yeah.
especially with
Warm your body up to
pastries.
it.
Yeah, and the bread and all that. I don't eat a lot of carbs myself, but then when I
Mhm.
go to France, I can't help it. But then,
Gotta get a croissant or something, I mean.
yeah, all the bread and all that. Yeah, just, control yourself and if as I said, if you have a dessert, share it with someone.
Yeah, yeah. That's what
Yeah.
we try and do too. Or we'll, like, get 2 small ones and then have a little bit of each other's, like, that's
Yeah.
I'm telling you, whenever we go somewhere, we maximize how many different things we can get because we would wanna try so many different things, but it works out kind of because then we do find that we almost eat a little healthier. We're eating a little more
Mhm.
strategically and smarter in that case because we're just not getting these, like, massive
Yeah. Yeah. But
bills, so
just stay mindful because if you don't think about
yeah.
it, then You
All
don't
hell
need to
breaks
do
loose.
it. Because all
Yeah.
this, all this new stuff, different, with all the local cuisine, they're going to be calling you, say,
Oh, yeah,
try me.
sadly.
Yeah. And then if you just, you don't think about it, oh, all right then, I have this, I have that. Before you know
Yeah,
it, you just don't feel very good and your energy is,
definitely.
is not great.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's,
and speaking of that movement,
yeah,
yeah, it's like and you might feel more lethargic, and then so speaking of that movement, it's like you maybe are sightseeing, right? Or you are on the go, or you want to be on the go because you want to see things, but you're just feeling so maybe a little
sluggish.
heavy by it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and like that's not what you want either. Like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
And the other thing is, that's why I said, just focus on protein. It is important
Yeah,
every
great point.
day for whatever we do, wherever we are, because you might find that you end up eating a lot more carbs than you normally would. And if you
Yes.
do, you might be eating less protein because it's filling. There's only so much you
Hmm.
can eat. If you're eating more of one thing, the likelihood is that you are eating less of something else.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. And I think and with certain countries or depending yeah, just completely depending on where you are and what the cuisine is, it's especially that's especially or we're just tempted by, the more non-protein
Yeah,
dishes or things
exactly.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. I always think of like Italy, there's some beautiful protein there and but there's also a lot of pasta.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, and which is
Yeah.
amazing, and I will indulge, but one thing I do love there and it depends on the restaurant we've been to, but their portions are smaller
Much more.
typically,
Yeah.
which I'm just like, "Thank you. That's how
Mhm.
it should be." Like
Yeah, definitely. I've actually started doing this with pasta, and I do that here even when I'm in Miami. But I was in
Yeah,
Italy in the summer, and what I would do is that I would order the main course, and my main course would be a fish dish or chicken,
right, right.
seafood. So I would actually ask them to serve me the main course first, and then I
Mhm.
will have the pasta afterwards.
Yeah. Right, because that's so much more filling, I guess, in a different way, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So this way you make sure you get enough protein, and then you
Yeah.
leave a little bit of room for some pasta that you can try.
Yeah. And then a little bit of dessert after that, but a dessert you're sharing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Really quick, can I ask where in Italy were you?
I was in Lake Como, so that was lovely, and
Oh,
also Milan.
beautiful.
That's wonderful. I love
Amazing.
that city. But I,
Yeah.
I did have pasta quite often, and I don't eat
Yeah,
pasta.
it's hard not to. Yeah, it's everywhere, first of all, and there's so many different kinds. You gotta try all the kinds, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't because I was out of control. I knew,
No,
beforehand
yeah.
that's what I was going to do, and
Yeah.
it was all pre-planned.
See, that mental preparation,
Yeah.
it really is important. But it's beautiful. You can kind of I wouldn't call myself very type A. I'm like a little bit type A, but like I also find it's more in your control, but it's also very empowering because you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, you kind of have like an idea of
Mm.
how it will be going into it, but you can get excited about all the different things you'll try and yeah, I don't know. There's something about it that I think it's just like, okay, it's just that mental prep is really
Yeah,
powerful.
exactly.
Yeah,
And you feel good about it afterwards because you feel that, you've enjoyed yourself
definitely.
and you've also stayed in control.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of some of the places you've been to, because we can't have someone here on the podcast who's been to 7 continents and cannot dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So talk to us about just some of these countries you have been to, because I think you had mentioned and prior to us coming on that travel, it sounds like, has been a big part of your life since
Yes.
childhood, really. So can
Yeah.
you just talk to us a little bit about that and how you
Yeah.
caught the travel bug like so many of us have?
Yeah, I think I was actually born with it.
Yeah.
And my father had a travel business. So we started
Oh,
going
amazing.
away when I was only a few years old. I grew up in Hong Kong, so we were in Asia. And then I
Okay.
moved to England, and it just hasn't stopped. When I was in England, it's so close to Europe, so it's very easy to go
Oh,
to all these
yeah.
different countries. But I just like experiencing a different culture. I like
Yeah.
planning for the trip, doing all the research. It's really exciting.
Oh,
And
me
then
too.
since I've been in Miami, I've been going to South America, just took
Oh,
advantage
nice.
of that. Went to
Yeah.
Peru and
Mm.
Ecuador a few years ago, and they're beautiful countries. Went to Machu Picchu, Galapagos. And then one of my favorite places recently, maybe 4 years ago, actually, no, not that recent, was Jordan.
Wow. Oh my God. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about Jordan, because of course, hear about it, see some things on social media and all of that,
Yeah.
but not as commonly traveled to, I would say. So yeah, what
Yeah,
did
I,
you love
I I
about it?
guess so. Because it's a long way for
Yeah.
Americans. But at the
Oh yeah.
time, I was back in London, and so from
Hmm.
London, I think the flight takes only 4 hours, so it's not too
Okay.
bad. Went there
Yeah.
for about 15 days. A tour company organized it. I went with a friend of mine, so we went around. Went to the desert, stay there. You can
Mm.
stay. I don't know if you've seen those bubble tents in the desert, individual tents. They're
Yes.
like a bubble.
Yeah. Oh, so cool.
It's got bathroom, air conditioning, Wi-Fi, everything.
Oh my God.
It was wonderful.
That's
In the middle of a
incredible.
desert, you can go camel riding, and then afterwards we went to Petra. It just traveled all
Oh,
over the country. It was just amazing. It's definitely one of my best trips so far, and I
I
love to
can.
go back. So that was
Oh,
amazing. But there's still some places, on my list that I would like to go to, and Egypt's one of them. So
yeah.
I'm doing some research. Possibly, hopefully, we'll go next year.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Where else is on your list? I'm dying to know now.
Uh, I'd like to go to Israel, but of course, it hasn't,
Mhm.
been possible. But now it looks like hopefully,
Yeah.
soon.
Mm.
Alaska, haven't, I love to do that.
It's
Both a land
beautiful.
trip and a cruise. Have you been?
Mhm. I haven't, but my parents actually years ago went on a cruise with some family
Mm,
members, and it was beautiful, and we're in California, we have no excuse, it's not
yeah,
that
yeah,
far, so we
yeah.
really should. But yes, I've heard incredible things too, so
Yeah, yeah. So I like to do that. And where else would I like to go to? Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Because now it's
Oh,
open to
wow.
tourism, so
Yes.
it's very different. I like going to places where the culture is completely different from what I'm accustomed to. And that's
Yeah.
why, there's a pattern, you can see, what
I
the
love
places
that.
I'm drawn to. The other one is Tunisia.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've heard amazing things about it. One place in Italy that I have been yet, and I would love to go sometime, is Sicily.
Yes, that's on our list next year too.
Oh,
John he's Sicilian by birth. That's how he got his citizenship. So it's like so sacrilege that we've never
mm,
been to the place that he's from and got his citizenship through. He's like, "This is embarrassing. We really need to go." I'm like, "Listen, you don't need to convince me. Like, let's just go."
yeah, yeah. The
But
food is
yes,
meant to
yeah.
be amazing. A lot of fish,
Beautiful.
seafood. So I love to. But the other thing is that talking about Italy and Lake Como,
Mhm.
sometimes it can be a bit tricky unless it's in a major city, because what I do a lot is that even when I'm traveling, I do my research for some local gyms that I can use. Because very
Oh,
often I
yeah,
prefer
great point.
staying at an Airbnb because then I have a kitchen, I can just have breakfast in the morning rather than rushing
Yeah.
out. But of course, then I don't have the use of a gym, a hotel gym. So, but a lot of places, for example, like Milan, Rome, Paris, London, Amsterdam, all those places, you're not going to have trouble finding a gym that would have guest passes. You can just go in for the day. But some other
Yeah.
places might be a bit tricky. I did have a problem when we were in Lake Como this summer. And with
Mhm.
Sicily, I'm not sure. Perhaps, that way might actually be better to stay at the hotel rather than an Airbnb.
Right, they have those amenities. Yeah, that's a great point. Because I know it's so funny, I feel like there's 2 types of people. There's the people that continue to work out on their vacation and they
Yeah.
never veer, or some people are like, "I am not going near a gym for this entire time that I'm gone."
Yeah, but I
And it's so
find I
funny, but
feel better that way. This way, I also won't feel so guilty about these huge meals that I have.
yeah.
And very often I find that when I'm traveling, I'm eating later than usual as well.
Yes, great point.
Mm.
Definitely, especially in European countries where, you're in Spain or even Italy or whatever, and you're eating at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's like, oh my gosh. Cause and with your digestion too, I don't know how they do. I mean, we definitely don't eat at like 5 or 6 o'clock here. We're kind of in the middle,
Yeah.
but it depends on the day. But no, that can also be tough on the body, right? Especially if
Yeah.
that's something we're not used to doing here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I did that in Europe, well, not just in Italy, but in Amsterdam when I was there this summer. So I ended up the dinners were very late, so very because the
Yeah.
service takes a while as well. It takes
Mhm.
time to finish a whole meal. So
Definitely.
very often we wouldn't finish until about 10, 11 o'clock, and that's late
Yeah.
for me.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I ended up actually, I would end up fasting until lunchtime. And actually,
Okay.
I would forego breakfast altogether.
Yeah, you might not even be that hungry, I get in a way too, and
No.
a lot it's interesting, so many of these countries really don't they're not big breakfast people either. I mean, I can certainly speak for Italy, I've been there long enough, like, or it's a cornetto or something, it's
Yeah.
something sweet, which I think is tough. Some of us love that in the morning, some of us are like, "It's too early for that."
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could kinda see why you would do that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Or have something very light, like an avocado
Right,
and a coffee.
right. Not a croissant, I guess.
Occasionally
It's probably frowned
to the
upon,
gym
but yeah.
afterwards. The gym days, you can have a croissant.
Or walk it off, right? Just walk
Yeah.
around Paris all day and you'll
Yeah,
walk around
exactly.
the museums and all the things. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's
So,
incredible. It's so funny you brought up Peru too, because that has come up
mm,
in a lot of conversations,
mm,
recently. Funny, I'm just like, I feel like it's like a sign that we need to go to Peru or South America or something. But yeah, I mean, in terms of traveling in preparing for trips like that, like, is there anything that you find that you do for one country or even kind of continent where there's, of course there's different countries, but
mm.
generally speaking, it's kind of has their way of doing things versus like a totally different place, or it's really just a lot of what we talked about today. It's the planning, it's getting familiar with that culture, how things work, foods
Yes.
available, what's seasonal, things like that.
Yeah, seasonal things. Going back to Egypt because I was watching a lot of YouTube and I'm finding
Let's
all
talk
these
about Egypt.
things.
I will talk about Egypt all day.
And apparently there's a lot of dust, desert dust,
Yes, yes, sure.
pollution, and apparently a lot of people end up getting allergies. So when you
Yeah.
hear something like that and you are susceptible to allergies, so make sure you bring some antihistamines with you
Good
and
point.
perhaps
Mhm.
even a mask, when you're walking out and about. And make sure, you check on the vaccinations and
Yeah,
travel insurance. That's very important. Make
yeah,
sure you get enough coverage. But
yeah.
some countries depends, I always research for organic stores and supermarkets. So some places have
Mhm.
them more than the others.
Yeah.
In Europe, it's easy. You can to find those. But
Mhm.
somewhere like Egypt or Tunisia, I don't know. You probably
Yeah.
won't find those. But you're going to find local markets that you can go to.
Yeah.
And because they were saying that in Egypt, mangoes are very popular, so you might see vendors selling mango juices.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. First of all, I'm not keen on the sugar content. And secondly, how clean is it? You really don't want to risk getting food poisoning when you're traveling.
Yes.
It's just not pretty.
Yeah.
You
No.
want to enjoy the trip. You want to be there every day, and have the
Yeah.
energy. Getting food poisoning just sets you back. So be careful.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, plan and travel with caution and just being
Yeah.
very aware of where you're going. I think that's a great point, which I think a lot of us are, but it is interesting. I see a lot on social media, but definitely a lot of people go somewhere and they're like, I really didn't expect this, or I didn't expect this, that, the other thing to be that bad or whatever. So
Mm,
it's tough. Sometimes it's trial by fire when we, go to some of these places. But as we wrap up, actually, that's a good question for you. Is there any of these countries that you've been to before where there's something that has kind of surprised you, either in a good or a bad way? Is there anything that comes
mm.
to mind?
Yeah, when I was in Japan, I mean, I traveled everywhere there because it was the
Mhm.
sakura season, cherry blossoms. Was there for 3 weeks, so in different cities. What I really noticed was that they don't have a lot of fresh vegetables. I don't understand why that was.
You would
A lot of
you would think
vegetables
so.
were
Interesting.
pickled,
Mhm.
very salty, covered in salt. Or,
Yeah.
you might get tempura, so with vegetables, but fresh
Mhm.
vegetables, so different. I'm Chinese, and in the Chinese culture, we eat a lot of vegetables. The Chinese cuisine, very
Yeah.
often you order a big plate of vegetables, and it's family style. You should share, with
Mhm.
each other, with other people. But you eat a lot of vegetables. My family will always say, oh, we order this meat, fish, whatever. And then they will say, let's have some vegetables. And it's a big plate, not tiny
Mhm.
portion.
Yeah.
So I was actually missing my fresh broccolis when I was in Japan.
Yeah. I
They,
bet.
they, they do eat salad. So I think somehow for some reason they're more into salads. But,
Okay.
but I like my broccolis, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, cauliflowers. So I was
Yeah,
missing
something to
all
really
those
munch
things.
on, like yeah. How interesting. You would kind of think that, but that again, that's interesting. So that's, an assumption, I guess, for lack of a better term, that some of us might make that it's like because especially in America, I think we hear that Asian cultures just have this beautiful relationship with food, and it is a
Mm,
lot healthier than America a lot of the time. And so, yeah, that's interesting. You would maybe like go into it thinking that, but then you get there and then yeah, come across something like that. So that's so
yeah.
interesting.
But one suggestion I have is that wherever you happen to be, wherever you go, if you go to a restaurant and you find that, you don't get a lot of vegetables, ask them to serve you
Yeah,
more and,
yeah.
and maybe do some substitution. You can always
Mhm.
ask. They can say no, but if you don't ask, they wouldn't
At
know
least you
what you
tried.
really like.
Yeah, absolutely. These are all great recommendations. As we start to close out, is there anything, any final words or any last sort of tips or things to keep in mind for anyone here listening who's maybe wants to travel a little more mindfully that we haven't already talked about today?
Yeah. First of all, I think I have a travel guide. It's a link. I believe I've given that to you. Maybe you can put it in the
Yeah, we could
show notes.
put it in the show notes, definitely.
The listeners can sign up for it, download it. It's a PDF, and it's all the tips that for preparation for the trip, during the trip, and what you do when you get there. So it's a list of
Amazing.
things you can go through, which comes in handy. But
Yeah.
I would say one thing to bear in mind is do your research, do your preparation. The internet's
Mhm.
full of information these days. You can have
Yeah.
apps you can download, like Google Translate app,
Mhm.
for Google Maps. So you can see where everything is. Do your
Yeah.
research. Don't wait till you're there. And this way
Yeah.
you can stay consistent.
I love it. That's great. Great advice. Or Chat GPT, I guess, is the thing,
Yeah.
use that to help you out, I guess. Although that's not very good for the environment, so maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
But but do the legwork ahead of time. I think that's a beautiful idea and make it a fun part of the planning
Yeah.
process. Like I think that's the thing where, it's just like maybe a little extra 10, 15 minutes of just looking around. It doesn't have to be, like your point, right? You don't have to make this some, big chore for yourself or whatever. But really, I think however we can like ease our way into these new places and ease our
Mhm.
bodies into it. Cause I love what you said earlier. Our body does not know it's on vacation, only our mind does. And I love that. I think that's such a really a beautiful and healthy mindset going into it, and we'll feel a lot better
Hmm.
because of it.
Yes, both mentally and physically.
Yes, absolutely. Tess,
Mm.
thank you so much for everything you have given us today. If people want to, you already mentioned that resource. We'll have that linked in the show notes as well. But if people want to connect with you or learn more, where can they find you?
Yeah, go on my website. Glow with Tess is spelled GLOWITHTESS. Go on it and sign up for my monthly newsletters. This way you get some inspirations and health tips every month. And I'm on social media, and I'm the same on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Glow with Tess. You'll find me there, and enjoy your travels. I think it's
Yes,
one of the best things in life.
it is. I know. It's why we have this podcast. 'Cause we just love talking about it. And I
Yeah.
always love hearing where people want to go, where's next on their list, and
Mhm.
compare notes and all the things. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited. We'll see you in Sicily next year, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh,
And Egypt.
I love it. Yes, yes, 1 year. I know, we were talking about that, and we were like, "I don't think we can bring our two-year-old daughter to
Mm,
Egypt." Maybe that's just an us trip or a later down the
mm,
line trip.
yeah.
We'll see, but yes, definitely. Tess, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.